session on moving rural voters on immigration. And I'm Caitlin Holmrich-Nealing. I'm the moderator. I'm the organizer at Michigan United, and I am originally from a rural part of Michigan called the Thumb. And this project is very dear to my heart, and I've been working on it a long time, so I'm really excited to share it with you all, along with my colleagues and our awesome Canvas team. And so today we're going to talk about why this is important. We're going to look at one specific project that's happening, led by People's Action. And then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of how we're doing it. It's a deep Canvas project, and you all are going to get some practice. So there will be time for questions at the very end. We have 15 minutes allocated for that. And the one request that we have for this session, this is a research project. So we're currently doing the research. It'll be done by Thanksgiving. And we ask that if you do post about this publicly or communicate about it publicly, you can talk about the ideas and you can talk about what you're learning and the skills, but please don't talk about the project or how it's a research project. Okay? Nod? Okay, thank you. All right, I think that was all I had. So our first up is Wendy Feliz. Yes. Yeah, okay.
Hi everybody, it's good to be with you. My name is Wendy Feliz and I do communications work for the American Immigration Council, which is a group based in Washington, D.C. So I'm going to say the sweetest words you'll ever hear from a speaker, which is I will be quick and to the point. And honestly, it's because you really want to hear from the organizers at Michigan United and People's Action, because what they're doing is really amazing. So I think what I want to say is what the work that they're doing, and just sort of collectively being a big fan of work that moves sort of the movable middle. I just wanted to make a few quick points about why I think this work is important and why it works. Number one, very simple, it's hard to hate up close. So it's very easy to hate people from a distance and on social media, etc. But when someone's standing in your door, up close with you and telling you their story, it's really, really hard to hate them. And so that's what the magic is about this work. We know from lots of work we've done over the years that positive contact with people from different backgrounds works. It's probably the only thing that works in terms of changing hearts and minds, right? But it has to be good contact, it has to be consistent over time. That's also why deep canvassing is a really, really promising strategy. Another really important thing that you'll hear more about is interventions that allow people who you're talking to say their piece, to talk about their feelings, to talk about their perspective of the world, does wonders in terms of opening them up to new information. So it feels good just to go tell people what we believe and what we think and what our values are, right? But if they don't feel heard, they have a harder time hearing us. And so what's really key to the intervention that you're going to hear about today is they give the person who they're canvassing a moment to tell their story too, right? Because nobody wants to be talked at. We all want to share our stories. It's really important to also note that immigration is a very emotional issue. I know we like to think we're all rational human beings and we make decisions based on facts, but I just ate a big bag of M&Ms for breakfast. That was not a rational choice. I know the facts. I was tired and it's an emotional time, and so I justified it for myself. And that's what people do all the time. On the issue of immigration, it's incredibly emotional for people. And so we've got to really essentially be able to find ways in the stories that sort of activate those emotions and enable them to connect and hear from us. Fifth point is there's a massive ambivalent middle on the issue of immigration. I know the loudest ones are the meanies, and we hear from them, but they're really actually a very small percentage of the population. It's more like there's a big, chunky middle, messy middle, who have very conflicting views on the immigration issue, right? They might believe fully that kids should get DACA and should be able to stay in the United States and be protected, and at the same time they can believe that we need a border wall. And in the research we've done, we've seen really conflicting views. And so what this intervention is attempting to do is help people work through that ambivalence and understand why having a more generous immigration system is actually the right thing to do. But we've got to be willing to lean into that mushy metal and test different interventions to see which ones will work. And then finally, America really needs therapy on immigration. They're so confused, they're so scared, they're so angry, they hear a lot of bad stuff on television and coming out of, political offices, and they really need therapy. And what this intervention is doing is it's honestly, in my view, a form of therapy, where we're talking to people and we're helping them work through their feelings on immigration. Is this easy, this work they're going to talk about? No. Is it inexpensive? No. Is it quick? No. But honestly, the work that we need to do to sort of change this country and get us to a better place in terms of being welcoming is a long road, right? And this is a really, really exciting intervention. So all I want to say is I'm really, really excited. What you guys are going to hear today is going to be life-changing, and you're going to take it all back to your communities and want to do it. So really excited to be here with you guys and hear that share.
Thanks so much for that, Wendy, and thank you, Caitlin, for organizing this. Good morning, everyone. My name is Merdad Osman. I'm Senior Strategist for People's Action, and just very happy that you're here, and we want to get through this so you can actually practice the Canvas. Just a little bit about me. So I've spent about 20 years organizing. About a decade of that has been in the immigrant rights movement. I was the field director for the National Immigration Reform Campaigns in 2009 and 2013. So I've been around the block. I have seen the breadth and the depth and the beauty of our shared movement, and I've also seen its limitations. My perspective is that this work to both inoculate and mobilize voters around immigration in rural areas is among the most important work that could be done. And just to show you the Deep Canvas strategy that we're moving is really part of an overall rural organizing strategy that we're using in about 15 states, and the director of the initiative, Adam Krugel, is here, who has to unfortunately leave, but if folks have questions, this is an overall snapshot of that program. The Deep Canvas is basically nested inside of this program. So you can see all the different counties that we're working in, the so-called pivot counties that flipped from Obama to Trump, and those are we're working in a subset of the places, and it's really there's an overall strategies around building people's organizations, movement politics, and really trying to move a bold agenda. The Deep Canvas that I'm going to talk about is really a piece of that, and we really wove together a bunch of different elements. One, we're very inspired by the Deep Canvas work that already happened, the work that was done by the California Immigrant Policy Center and the Tennessee Immigrants' Rights Organization, and also the groundbreaking work that was done on the race-class narrative that was really forwarded by the Anat Shinker-Osorio. And there were a couple of things that we noticed. We had a massive listening campaign, and we learned a bunch of things. One, immigration was really solving immigration was down on the list in terms of where rural voters were at. However, rural voters were quicker to blame immigrants for problems in their community, but what's instructive about this slide is that they were quickest to blame the 1%, big corporations, Wall Street, and that dissonance, if you see it, immigrants down on the list, government controlled by big money donors, was way high up on the list. So that we really noticed that dissonance. And in that big listening campaign, there was a word that we kept hearing, and that was the word lack. Lack of jobs, lack of healthcare, lack of a belief in their brighter future. And there was a very easy coupling that people made between immigrants and scarcity. And so we kept trying to figure out how do we run at that coupling that happens. How do we complicate that notion that people have in their heads? And especially looking towards 2020, we know the election is going to be all about immigration, all about race, all about newcomers. Trump's quote that our country is full is not an offhanded comment. It's really the tip of the strategy in their strategy to win. So what do we do to complicate that latching that happens. So we wove all of those learnings into this program, and here's what we're doing. We're talking to people at their doors in longer conversations of 10 to 15 minutes. We're in 3 states, here in Michigan, with Down Home, North Carolina, and with Pennsylvania Stands Up in rural Pennsylvania. We're doing 3,000 conversations. It's a controlled experiment. We've built a partnership with 2 of the two leading researchers who have really tried to figure out how does Deep Canvas work to really change people's minds and voter psychology. Josh Kala from Yale University and David Brockman from Stanford. And we're building to next fall, and we're really building for the long term as well. And what you'll see once you look at the script, we're using empathy as a bridge. This is not about additional talking points and facts about immigrants. This is about using human emotion and, again, trying to inoculate the problem of scarcity. We're using the race-class narrative. I won't talk a lot about it now because I want folks to actually see it in action. And the big thing I want to underscore is we're getting a 30% movement rate, meaning voters are really moving along in terms of how they are thinking about immigrants. A couple of top-line lessons. I'm looking for Caitlin for time.
You're good.
Okay. Here's the thing. Our superpower is engagement. It's not more talking points. If you're wondering how do we short-circuit Russian interference online and the barrage of anti-immigrant ads that have already come at people, I'll tell you. It's eye contact and a knock on the door. Because what we need to do is actually get in there and contest and be in conversation with people rather than throwing additional facts at them. We have to create, what the Deep Canvas does is that it creates space and time for people to actually make meaning about what's happening for themselves and to be in deep engagement, deep emotional connection. So we want to scale this work, would love to turbocharge it, would love to be in conversation with movement allies about exactly how to do that. And I'll say this, for those who think that we should just hunker down, that we're good in our blue cities, that we're good in our blue states, that's a path to political suicide. I would also argue that it's immoral. And so we can't write that off as just too hard, because I'll tell you straight from the mouths of our canvassers in North Carolina, whoever is first on people's porches will win. And we have a choice. Will it be us, or will it be white supremacists? And I'm not exaggerating. The tug, we know from our history and our present, the tug, there's a gravitational pull to white supremacy. That story is very easy to understand. But the experience that canvassers will show you, we have an incredible story to tell that's about solidarity, that actually invokes race rather than running from it. And in story after story demonstrates that we can connect around stories of solidarity, the history of our country, that demonstrating when we come together across race and class, we can do amazing things and we can actually create a better future together. So when we can get in there, when we can listen, when we can actually contest, we will win.
All right, so this script is magic, all right? It took us 2 months to come up with it. I talked to my dad. I was just like, Dad, I think there's something here about immigrants and scarcity. Please be patient while I listen and try to listen compassionately and try to respond with love. It took about an hour. But these conversations, I think, are averaging 17 minutes in Michigan. I don't know about the other states, but I'm going to walk us step by step through the script, and then we're going to get a chance to practice. So the first step and step 2 is just introducing the conversation. And it's asking the voter, how do you feel about universal health care? And then how do you feel about including undocumented immigrants in a universal health care plan? So it's them ranking on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is totally unsupportive, 10 is totally supportive, 5 is undecided, right? It's asking them to rank their own prejudice. And it's a scale because we're trying to create a safe space, like Wendy said. We want them to know that whatever they say, we still accept their humanity, right? It's okay if you're somewhere in the middle. And this isn't the research. This number is not data, right? It's just a chance for them to process out loud and to say what they think. Next slide. So that's the step 2 question. And we really want to pull out what is the worst thing they think about undocumented immigrants. We want to know so that we can have a chance to address it later in the conversation. Next slide. All right, so after those first 2 questions, we move into Storyland. We try to get, they had their chance to say what they heard on Fox News. That's over, okay? So from here on out, we're assertive but curious. And we want to know their story, not what they think, not what they believe, not what their opinion is, not what facts they know. We want to know their story. Do they know somebody who has moved to the U.S.? And we go through, we call it the cone of curiosity, getting all the details. Who is that person? How do you know them? Are they documented? What's that experience been like for them? How does it feel for you knowing that they're going through that? Why does it feel that way? And if they don't know somebody, or if they do, we also tell a story about somebody who's undocumented that we know, or our own personal immigration story for some of the canvassers. And the 3 points we're trying to make there are immigrants pay taxes, immigrants are in a broken immigration system, that it just isn't working out. We don't tell these facts, right? We tell it in a story. And the biggest point we try to make is these people are humans. They have hope, they have fear and frustration and anger, right? And they are sometimes making very difficult decisions for what's best for them and their loved ones. And so it's really building that first bridge of empathy. Next slide. Step 4 is where we do this thing, like Wendy said, asking them their story. And it's more personal because most of these people aren't immigrants themselves. It is multiracial in rural areas, but they're mostly not immigrants themselves that we're knocking on their doors. So the key question is, when was a time when you really needed care or support? And after 10 minutes of conversation, people are telling us the hardest times in their lives. And we do the cone of curiosity again, all the details. Were you a parent at that time? Did you have health insurance? How did that feel? I can empathize. Why did it feel that way? You know, like asking all these questions and really being compassionate. It's almost like therapy. And then we also tell our own story of when we needed support. And so this is the 4-ingredient recipe. 1 immigration story we tell, 1 they tell, 1 story of needing support that we tell and that they tell. And the conversation is flexible. It can happen in any order depending on what the person is most receptive to. Next slide. So I'm running up on time, but the step 5 is the race-class narrative. This is building on previous research about how we talk about if there is a common enemy that we share that is trying to profit off of all of us and is pitting us against each other so that we can't come together to ask them to do better, to ask them to be responsible for the health insurance system and the healthcare system, to ask them to be responsible for the immigration system. And it's positing that we can come together like we have in the past, and we can demand better, and we can elect people who will represent us. So it's helping them take their own story of hardship and struggle and make meaning of it in this multiracial base. Their story of when they've had a tough time suddenly they're a part of us in step 5. We're inviting them to be a part of us, and we're talking to them like they are. Next slide. And this is the winding up on the end, step 6. It's reconciling cognitive dissonance. So this is where we bring up some things that they're saying, like, it sounds like you really believe all people deserve care and have had a tough time when they've had to make tough decisions. But that you also you aren't willing to come together with people to make the system better for you or for anyone else. Or you aren't willing to come together with undocumented immigrants. And there's other variations of it depending on what their dissonance is. So we ask them to process it out loud, and that's the inoculation. So next time they see an anti-immigrant ad talking about how they're flooding the labor market and using Medicare, right? Instead of being susceptible to that, they're going to think about, well, I changed my mind about this once. I chose love and coming together once. And final slide, we ask them to rate one last time. So Eloise Garley is our canvasser who's going to share her experience. Thank you. And then we'll practice.
Thank you everybody for having me to share my experience canvassing in the rural areas in Michigan. I'm Eloise Garley. I live in Detroit. I'm originally from Liberia, West Africa. I work as a mediator. I also do canvassing and campaigning with Michigan United. And be an advocate for social justice. I also find myself going back to Liberia almost every year to campaign on social issues. As a matter of fact, when I met Kit Lane, I had just come from Liberia. I was involved in the campaign that was very violent, where the president of that country urged his supporters to beat the opposing side that was contesting. And I was on live and had rocks thrown at my car. My car was, the windshield got broken. So when I met Kit Lane, she said that, hey, we're doing deep canvassing. I didn't give it much consideration. I felt that, hey, I've been made to fearlessly campaign in every situation. However, when I went to bed the day before canvassing, and I thought about deep canvassing in rural areas, I'm like, wait a minute, am I going to talk to people who have this strong antagonistic view of immigrants? And I being an immigrant with my deep accent that defines my unique identity, will stand in front of these people? I got afraid. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. But I thought it over. I'm like, you have to explain your own story if you want change. You can't let the narrative be explained by people who haven't experienced what you have experienced. So I got up the next day and went. My husband took me, it was my first time going to that neighborhood. It was like 4 to 5 minutes in the suburb. I'm like, baby, it's getting scarier. But we made it there, and we met beautiful canvassers that were willing. The spirit was high, and we started our first day. But my fear stemmed from having conversation with people that I've never met and would have never met if I've not joined the team. How do I tackle that fear? So right now, as I talk to you, what I do at Michigan United is having conversations with real American human beings who believe that undocumented immigrants are illegal. They don't deserve health care. They need to go back to the country. As Caitlin showed you our presentation on the question, the sheet we use, my most important one is number 2. When the question is asked, would you support an undocumented immigrant receiving health care? Oh no. They don't work for you. They're lazy. Imagine you being an immigrant and you're standing in front of someone and they're telling you that you're lazy. But because we're trained to be relaxed and accept their stories to be told, I have to stand there and agree with them that yes, immigrants are lazy. You know, I agree with you. And then I tell them, have you met an immigrant before? And they say no. And I'm like, wow, welcome to your first immigrant. She's right on your doorstep. Now you know an immigrant. And I'll be like, yeah. And then we have broken the ice. They shake my hand and be like, welcome to America. Then I tell them, I will tell you my immigrant story since you don't have one. You see, I've been in the United States for 19 years. But before I came, my husband had to come legally. Then he got undocumented because his legal status expired. He came on a 1-month visiting visa. Then I tell him, if you look back in the 90s, you will understand that Africa had civil crisis in almost 34 countries. And my country, Liberia, happened to have been one of those countries. So I grew up, my teenage years, in a war-torn environment with instability, where social institutions were broken, where debt was the order of the day. But because we're in that environment, we didn't care. We thought it was the norm. So when my husband came to America and saw that there was structure, that there was far more better things to life, that dignity and safety did exist, he wanted a part of that. And I tell you, he was not going back to an uncertain country where he had no future. And then they agree with me and tell me, yes, I would have done the same. I wouldn't have gone back. And then I explained to them how, when my husband applied for political asylum, he became undocumented because his visiting visa had expired. However, he was given a work permit, a work authorization to work like every other American in this country. And I looked up to that and said, guess what? He wasn't discriminated against when it came to paying taxes. He paid taxes like every other American. And when I'm talking to them, I look them in the eyes. And we have that connection. Then they tell me, they're like, well, your husband did it the right way. And I said, sure, he did. Like so many other immigrants here, they want to do it the right way, but there aren't much options for them to do it the right way. I said, now, after my husband got approved, he sent for us. The process took him 9 months to get approved. After he got approved, he had to wait additional 15 months to get his newly married wife and family over. We're like, wow, that's pretty long. I'm like, but what's even longer is that now it takes more than 15 months. Some families have to wait 5, 10, 15, and some more years. I said, when I came to the United States, I was grateful. And then we move on to our tough down story. And in the tough down story, sometimes I explain, what has happened to them. And then I explain my story, why I've had tough times, and how I made it my responsibility during one of my tough times when I had to have the system assist me because I had a critical health condition. And I made a pledge to give back to the United States. I said I came in this country as a high school graduate. And I decided to go back and be a productive citizen in the school. I went to school and got a master's degree. Then they tell me, oh, but you're different. You're a different immigrant. I'm like, no, I'm the same. You wouldn't have known my potential if you had delayed me or denied me. So these are the conversations we'll be having at the door. And we move people. After people hear somebody's story, they be at 0 or 4, and they go up to 10, 9, 7. They're like, their story.
Thank you, Eloise. All right, so now it's time to practice. So I'm just going to quickly introduce our Deep Canvas team members. If you want to stand up. Jill Murphy, our Deep Canvas lead. Maria Elena, Susan, and Teslee. So we're going to ask you all to stand up, and we're going to get into 2 rows in the center of this room, right here. So if I could ask people who have more experience having conversations like this, or who want to be the first to try, please stand on the left, or it'd be your right. Stand on this half of the room. And people who are totally new and want to experience it before trying it, stand on this side. All right, so you're going to stand up, face each other in pairs.